Good evening, everyone. It's so lovely to be with you this evening. Merry Christmas. I hope you're all feeling nice and ready for it now. I mean, only a few more hours to go till the main event, right? Got all your presents wrapped up, Ed? Yeah? Got your biscuits and carrots out for Santa and his reindeer? Lovely. Run out of carrots? Gonna have to give, I don't know, brandy snaps to the reindeer? Oh, he's got to share with... Oh, right, fair enough then. Poor old Rudolph. Well, this Christmas time, as Ed has already said, we've been asking the question, what are we waiting for? We do the same thing every Christmas, but what's it all about? What are we looking ahead to? You might be looking ahead this year to business as usual, or perhaps there's some big milestone heading round the corner. For Christians, though, the main answer is relatively straightforward. We're waiting for Jesus. That's what Advent's about. We're waiting for Jesus. So we spent that first installment of our sermon series by starting at the end. Jesus born in a stable 2,000 years ago. But we wanted to understand this ending better, so like a film, we traveled back to the beginning of everything to get some context. The story of creation. When God made the universe and put humans in a garden, only for God's creations to go their own way and turn away from him. That's a story I think we all know too well. But then there's also another story, the story of Israel specifically. We learned about how this small nation kept being warned that their unjust behavior would lead them to ruin. And they didn't listen. And they came to ruin. But the prophet's message wasn't all doom and gloom. They brought a message of hope, that God would one day send a new king to sort all of that mess out. And then while singing the Christmas carols, we learned another story, and we learned the same thing this morning about the story that feeds into this ending that we started with of Jesus' actual birth. And that's the story of a man called Joseph and Mary, as they waited and prepared for that big moment in a stable because there was no room at the inn. Oh, how one life can make all the difference. Each of these stories is about waiting for something, anticipating something in the future. Jesus' birth and life are woven into all of that waiting that we've been looking at. And the point of Advent is we are still waiting, each in our own ways, waiting for Jesus to return, waiting for him to finally put the world right. Our waiting is woven into that same story, so it is our story. And today we have another flashback to look to explore our waiting. We are pausing the narrative and rewinding the tape, and we see the first moment that Mary, Jesus' mum, the mother of God, discovered her life was going to change forever. So we're going to have our first reading from Luke chapter 1, starting at verse 26. Hopefully it will come up on the screen. So Luke 1, chapter 1, verse 36. In the 6th month, God sent the angel Gabriel to Nazareth, a town in Galilee, to a virgin pledged to be married to a man named Joseph, a descendant of David. The virgin's name was Mary. The angel went to her and said, "Greetings, you who are highly favored, the Lord is with you." Mary was greatly troubled at his words and wondered what kind of greeting this might be. Wouldn't you be greatly troubled if suddenly you're just doing your normal daily business and then suddenly an angel comes in shouting right in your face, "Greetings, you who are highly favored, the Lord is with you." Mary was greatly troubled at his words and wondered what kind of greeting this might be. But the angel said to her, "Don't be afraid, Mary. You have found favor with God. You will be with child and give birth to a son, and you are to give him the name Jesus. He will be great and will be called the Son of the Most High. The Lord God will give him the throne of his father David, and he will reign over the house of Jacob forever. His kingdom will never end. That story we learned of Israel waiting so long for their new king. The angel's saying something about that. He's saying that this boy that will be born, called Jesus, whose very name means he will deliver us. That's the boy. You're going to give birth to him. How will this be? Mary asked the angel, since I'm a virgin. The angel answered, the Holy Spirit will come upon you, and the power of the Most High will overshadow you. The Holy One to be born will be called the Son of God. Even Elizabeth, your relative, is going to have a child in her old age. And she, who was said to be barren, is in her 6th month right now. That's what we learned in the passage directly preceding this. We know this to be true in this story. Mary doesn't yet. Nothing is impossible with God. Mary's simple reaction: I am the Lord's servant. May it be to me as you have said. Then the angel left her. What a scene that is. Nothing can ever be the same again for Mary. How do you process something like that? Genuinely, if somebody here has an answer, how do you process something like that? I mean, imagine going from your complete normality, doing your chores, listening to the birds, and then an angel bursts in and tells you your whole life is going to look totally different. I mean, what was her personality like? Was she quiet, Mary? Was she ambitious? Was she an anxious sort of person? Was she bright and confident? Because some people might relish this chance. Others may just want to continue happily but in obscurity. And how old was she to take on something like this? I mean, she was probably very young. Maybe she didn't even know some of the questions, the practicalities to ask the angel about what was going to happen. She's inexperienced. What are the consequences of this? What are the living arrangements? Imagine your young daughter turned to you right now and said, she's pregnant. How did she know? Oh, well, the angel told her. Giving birth, becoming a parent is emotional at the best of times. But would Mary's community reject her, an unmarried mother? What would her fiancé Joseph do about all of this? There are all these questions flying around our heads. Can you imagine how many more must have been flying around Mary's? At some points in this journey, she must have felt very alone and afraid. I think in church we often treat Mary as this blank page, ready and willing to have this new narrative typed on her. But when we treat her as the paragon of duty and humility, is this accurate? Well, our first insight into how she's actually feeling, those words. Mary, understandably, was greatly troubled or disturbed. Mary already has a life. She's not a blank page. She's already got all these hopes and aspirations. They may not have looked very 21st century to us, but they were still hers. Perhaps her dreams focused on her life with her fiancé, Joseph. Would they be able to afford that new kitchen? Could she and Joseph start a carpentry empire, reaching from Jerusalem to Galilee? And like many Jews, whether or not she cared that much about politics, she probably looked forward to the Romans getting booted out of the country and that new, long-awaited king. But now suddenly the whole nation's waiting suddenly rests on her shoulders. She's got to bring this king up. She's got to give birth to him. We don't know what Mary was waiting for, But clearly the story of Mary's waiting is of an angel bulldozing through all her expectations. And I think all this makes her reaction that much more impressive. She doesn't say much, but she says this: I am the Lord's servant. May it be as you have said. All those fears, uncertainties, all those life plans dashed and confused by some guy with wings bearing a message from the Creator. But imagine, despite all this, you manage to say, I am the Lord's servant. Let it happen. In the service this morning, we were creating top trump cards and putting values like Mary's intelligence being, I think, 4 out of 5, and the Three Kings carol factor, so how often they appear in carols, being a 5. That was Ed's choice. But what if we were to add bravery to that list of attributes? What would you score her? You see, Joseph had the bravery to stay with Mary and trust that God really was the cause of Mary's pregnancy. The Three Kings had the courage to travel vast distances following a star. But I think Mary trumps the lot of them. She says, I am the Lord's servant. But her story doesn't end there, so we're going to have our second passage. Luke 1 again, starting at verse 46. And Mary said, my soul glorifies the Lord. My spirit rejoices in God, my Saviour. For he has been mindful of the humble state of his servant. Now, from now on, all generations will call me blessed, for the Mighty One has done great things for me. Holy is his name. His mercy extends to those who fear him from generation to generation. He has performed mighty deeds with his arm. He has scattered those who are proud in their innermost thoughts. He has brought down rulers from their thrones, but has lifted up the humble. He has filled the hungry with good things, but has sent the rich away empty. He has helped his servant Israel, remembering to be merciful to Abraham and his descendants forever, even as he said, as he promised to our fathers. Earlier, she's greatly troubled. She only manages a few words. But in this second passage, she bursts out in song. It's called the Magnificat. We the Christians put it to music very, very early and sang it. It's a song. In between these two passages, it doesn't say how much time passed. You could probably work it out, but it doesn't say too much how much time has passed. But she travels to her cousins, Elizabeth, that one that is also pregnant that the angel mentioned. And in that time between I am the Lord's servant and traveling to her cousins, she's ready to burst out in song. My soul glorifies God. My spirit rejoices. God's been mindful of Mary, and she will be called blessed forever. However much time has passed, she's clearly processed something of what's going on, and she rejoices. She's excited by the opportunity. In fact, she's using these words from the Old Testament in her song when Hannah, another character, is unable to have children. But God blesses her, so she has a son, the prophet Samuel. And like Hannah, Mary says God will perform mighty deeds. He will overturn political powers, meaning the poor and the powerless will be given long-awaited dignity and love. I am the Lord's servant has been transformed into this mighty song and a statement of faith. Faith because she trusts God's story and because she trusts that she is part of that story. So do you think that means she never had another doubt? Never question how to raise the child, let alone this child? I don't think so. The fears and problems don't magically then disappear. So how much of your own life do you see in Mary's story this evening? And most of all, do you feel ready and prepared to respond to something that happens to disrupt all your plans and expectations? Do you feel ready for that? Would you know how to respond if a winged angel man suddenly dropped a bombshell on you? I think Mary's story encouraged us to have this, courage and the intention to fall back on what we know we should do. Mary traveled to her trusted cousin, maybe to get away from the prying eyes and the comments in Nazareth, or maybe because her cousin's husband is a temple priest, a wise man to consult, even if he can't actually speak at this time, but she doesn't know that yet. Mary also fell back on the right words. I am the Lord's servant. Maybe she said those words as a daily reminder, not because she understood everything, or maybe even truly believed them, but maybe she said those words as a daily reminder until the day that she could proclaim that song, that she could proclaim them as true. Sisters and brothers, we don't need a miraculous encounter with a winged bloke for our expectations, our dreams, our waiting to be interrupted by something. As a church, we wait for Jesus to come back. We have been waiting for 2,000 years to do all those things that Mary said in faith in that song, to fill the hungry, to scatter those who are proud, to overturn politics and bring true and permanent justice. But as we've been waiting this year and others, things get in the way. Wars, financial insecurity, or more positive things like a baby or a new relationship or just unforeseen opportunities. All these things, unexpected, can disrupt our plans and hopes. I don't know if you can tell, but I'm really moved and encouraged by Mary's example this evening. I love that way she just pauses, or at least that's the strength of the text, because that's all we've got. Pauses from that moment between the two passages to take time to process what's been happening. In this passage also, she doesn't just come back with a string of words towards the angel. She just has two statements. That's it. She's pausing. She's taking her time to process what comes next. How much do we know that to be true? How much does counting to 10 really help? But how many times do we actually do it? How powerful is pausing to process, giving ourselves that time, and then being intentional about what we do next, focusing on it until the confidence and the calm returns, blocking out the noise. You know, sometimes it takes time for joy as well to sink in. It takes time. Sometimes, you know, and I've experienced this, we just need that patience to wait before I can actually experience and enjoy this unexpected surprise. It takes time. So I think there's a lot in here for each of us. I do find intentionality that probably the hardest thing in all of this. Because when a distraction comes my way, I don't always fall back on the right things. So I stop making constructive steps. But this example of Mary, she remembers to act in a godly way. I am the Lord's servant. She makes those healthy and constructive steps for her by going to her cousin. She does the healthy thing. Maybe she's waiting for her heart and mind and all her planning to catch up with what's been happening. But I do find being in church and saying those words that we say together, even when I don't mean them, is a powerful way to help me focus on the things I can take control of. It encourages me to go out from church, to be intentional, to be constructive. Because the more we say things and encourage one another through those disruptive moments in our lives, the more things we say actually happen. The hungry are fed, the more justice comes, and life is enjoyed. Mary's way this evening is less panicked. It is suggesting that we actually don't need to be on top of everything, but we can learn to act more constructively by falling back on the people, the actions, and the words that are most familiar to us when it's really, really hard. In a moment, we're sharing communion together. And I think it's that great example of something we can do over and over. But for me, when I was struggling personally and the sermon and the songs just didn't cut it, I found communion a wonderful habit to fall back on when we don't know what to do or what to say or how to move forward. We can, at communion, simply come to receive, to join in with everyone in this building. And so this evening, when we come to communion, let's bring ourselves fully to God, whatever stage we're at, and join with Mary in this act of bravery and in Mary's wisdom as we fall back on what is familiar and we grow stronger.